On today's video, I'm gonna get my gold out of my gold ore. About 6 months ago, myself and Chad and Harry from Mine Operator went up to my new gold mine. We got it rehabbed, we got back to the vein, we drilled it, we blasted, we mucked the ore, we got it down here, and today is gonna be the video where we finally get our gold out. I have been so excited to get this stuff ground up and get some gold out. I know you guys have been waiting a long time for this as well. We're gonna start this process with our jaw crusher, then we're gonna run it down through our hammermill over here onto our shaker table and recover our gold. I've got about 40 sacks here. Each sack weighs about 50 pounds, so we've got a ton. And this is the run of mine stuff that we blasted, mucked, put in sacks, down the raise, out to the portal, in the truck, and all the way down here to the lowlands. But I do have a few bags of this stuff left over. I'm gonna list it on eBay if you guys are interested in trying out your hand, getting some gold from this stuff. And stay tuned a little later in the video because I got another surprise for you coming up. The whole process is gonna start here with our 6x10 jaw crusher. The ore gets fed down the feed chute here, down into the jaws. The jaws crush it down to about 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch minus. This little 6x10 is a great unit. It'll do between 1 to 3 tons per hour, about as fast as you can feed it by hand. It makes a great 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch product that we can then bring over to our 16 inch by 12 inch hammermill. I'll feed the ore down the orange hopper of the hammermill. The hammermill is run wet to keep the dust down. There are 20 swinging chrome hammers inside that hammermill that feed up the ore until it will pass a 0.8 millimeter screen that wraps around the lower 180 degrees of the hammermill. And once it's crushed and falls out those slots in that hammermill screen, the slurry will come down this orange chute and into the aluminum shaker table distributor trough. Once in the distributor trough, the slurry is evenly spread out and fed onto our 4x8 shaker table. The gold and other dense minerals settle down into our grooves in the shaker tabletop, and the shaking action of the shaker table moves the dense material in the grooves over to the cleaning plane and down into the number 1 and number 2 concentrates. The shaker table will recover 95% of the free mill gold down to 325 mesh, and we have recorded 400 mesh and smaller gold being recovered on the shaker table. The number 1 concentrates will hold the majority of the gold. The number 2 concentrates will be a mixture of mostly sulfides with a little bit of free gold. And the majority of the sulfide concentrates will report the number 3 middlings. All of the quartz and other gangue minerals will flow off the shaker table because they are not dense enough to settle down into the grooves. They flow down into the number 4 tailings trough and are piped over to our spiral classifier. The spiral classifier classifies the material by weight. So in this settling pond at the bottom of the spiral classifier, anything that can settle down into the bottom of the pond will get augured up and out the spiral classifier. into the coarse tailings bag at the end of the spiral classifier. During this process, the material is also dewatered And so it's a very nice product. It's much easier to handle than mucky, wet tailings, and it can easily be rerun back through a system or another grinding device to liberate more gold. Any particles that don't settle down to the bottom of the screw flow out the black pipe and into our settling pond, which is a buried concrete tank. And only the very finest particles are able to flow up out the water column and into the settling pond. These are the three core components of our 1 ton per hour turnkey system. We also have a much more automated 1 ton per hour system where the operator can feed the material directly into a vibrating hopper, which flows down through the jaw crusher into the hammer mill, onto the table, and out the spiral classifier without ever having to handle the ore again. And if you're interested in any more information on the products we sell, you can give us a call or email, and you can find lots more information on our website, all of which can be found in the description below. I've just finished up the run here behind me. I've got that bucket, one more too. The shaker table's doing its thing. The water's a little bit muddy, so it's real hard to see what's going on. But the shaker table is still separated by density, and all the gold's coming across this way to the number 1 and number 2. We're all finished up here. We're going to take a look at our number 1 concentrate here. There we go. That is all the number 1 concentrate from 40 bags. So about a ton, plus or minus maybe 10%, but there's maybe a pound there. My experience has been this is where 90% of the free gold goes, 95% sometimes. The rest goes into the number 2. Here's our number 2. I had to switch buckets here towards the end because my other bucket got full, but there's that much. And then this is the one we started with. It got pretty full there about 3/4 of the way through the run. But that's what the number 2 looks like. And it's just mostly pyrrhotite and pyrite are the 2 main sulfides I have in this ore. Before we get started smelting our stuff down, I want to show you another little project I've been working on. I'm going to run some of our ore that I got out of my gold mine. I'm going to try and run a ton through this thing dry. I was amazed at how fine this thing can get. It was crushing really, really fine dry. I think it crushes a lot finer dry than it does wet. I've got 2 bags full that we crushed through our 16x12. I've been getting a lot of emails from you guys asking if there was any way that I could crush the ore so you could just pan it out directly, because a lot of you guys don't have crushers. So I'm going to fill these bags, put them on eBay. So if you guys are interested in buying some pre-crushed ore, check out the eBay listings. The link is down in the description below. I've got 74 bags of crushed up ore. And when they're gone, they're gone. But now let's get to smelting. We've got 500 grams of number 1 concentrates. So now let's mix up some flux. I've got our flux mixed up here. Let me mix it in with our number 1s. When we got everything mixed up, I've gone back and forth and I've tried experimenting with all sorts of different flux recipes. And kind of the one that I've landed on is I like to do about twice as much flux as there is concentrates. In this particular one, since I'm dealing with pure sulfides, I did about 650 grams of soda ash. I did about another 150 grams or so of anhydrous borax, and then I did the rest as silica sand, which got me up to 1,000 grams. I'm going to add a bunch of iron in here in the form of nails. That's going to pull the sulfur off some of these sulfide compounds. It's going to reduce any base metals in there that aren't iron, and the iron is going to go into an FES phase, which is just iron and sulfur. And the thing about that is it's soluble in our basic slag. So that's why I added so much soda ash. We hopefully won't get a matte layer between our metal button and our slag. All the FES should be absorbed into our slag. So we'll have a nice big fat black slag layer and a little button at the bottom. That's going to be where all our precious metals are. Here's our number 10 or 12 crucible. Should have plenty of room for all of our concentrates here. We'll add some nails in the top. And I'm not going to add any collector metal. I believe I have enough gold to act as its own collector metal, and it'll kind of conglomerate together and all sink down to the bottom of the crucible. And then when I pour it out, it'll just all go down to the bottom of the cone mold. Okay, everybody, here we go. There's maybe a little bit of matte on there, but I think all this underneath is all metal. Well, we've got 121 grams of something there. I figured there was only going to be about 1 to 2 ounces of gold at the maximum, so that'd be about 60 grams. So we've got 2 to 4 times more than I thought we were going to get. So I'm thinking again, there's probably some matte on there. Well, I'm going to try something here. This might be crazy or it might not work. I've put our metal prill and probably some matte there in the bottom of a crucible. I'm going to put it in here. I did this one other time. It worked okay. I'm going to see if I can melt out the metal from the matte, and then I can pour the metal out. I'm also going to add 18 grams of bismuth. The bismuth will really help reduce the melting point of any precious metals in there, and that way we don't have to get it so hot, and we can leave the matte phase there, and all the precious metals in the bismuth alloy will melt, and we can pour it out much cooler than we would if it was just precious metals. You know, I think I've got this all figured out. Oh, this will be easy. We'll just smelt down our cons. I've done it a bunch of times. We'll get our ounce of gold or ounce and a half of gold. It'll be great. And then, you know, it throws me for this loop and I don't know what's going on. Let me show you what I got here. So this is the stuff that I scraped out of the bottom of the crucible while it was still real hot. And I think this is all the iron sulfides that we remelted down, but I couldn't get them to melt again. I could feel them with my stir stick when I was stirring on the bottom. Here's what I just poured, and it was a fine pour, but usually when I've got a bunch of collector metal, I added that 18 grams of bismuth, and there should be an ounce of gold in there. I usually see a big metallic, I don't know, phase pour out into the bottom of the cone mold, and I didn't see that on this one. I do not know where my gold went. I should have an ounce of gold somewhere, either here or the stuff on the table I just showed you, or maybe it's, I don't know where it is. Well, I tared the bin, obviously. I've got 116 grams of this matte stuff, and I think I put in 120 or something is what I remember. So I didn't reduce the volume at all, hardly. I mean, 5 grams is nothing. So all my precious metals is in there still. Okay, here we go. I either have an ounce of gold in the bottom of this, or we have a mystery on our hands here. Man, look, nothing. Nothing in there. Man, oh man, where did my gold go? Well, here's all that metal matte stuff that came out last night. And before I left last night, I took a little bit, put it in a cupel with some bismuth, and it didn't work very well, but I did get a little gold bead. And so that tells me that most of our precious metals, I think, is in this stuff. The interesting part about this is it's magnetic. So that tells me that there's obviously iron in it. I don't know how that happened. My furnace doesn't get hot enough to melt iron. There's no way that I could have melted those nails. The only thing I can think of is either we did something to the sulfides to reduce the iron and it alloyed with the precious metals and the bismuth I put in there, or the metallic precious metals and the bismuth, or maybe some other base metals in this ore alloyed with the iron, essentially dissolve some of the iron into our metallic phase at the bottom. I'm not sure. But what I do know is there's a bunch of precious metals in this stuff, so we got to get them out. The other thing I'm concerned about is this is our slag from our first smelt. It has kind of crumbled. Some of the more glossy slag has stayed intact, but you see a lot of that black powder that on some of my previous videos is what happened to the mat when it's exposed to air overnight. And so I want to smelt all this down again. I want to add the slag that we did from our second smelt. I want to add all that back into our number 12 crucible and melt it down. I'm going to play with the slag recipe a little bit, see if I can make it a little more acidic. Stage one, we're going to remelt all this stuff, pour it back into the cone mold, see if we can get some matte phase, maybe some metallic phase, and then we'll figure out what to do with that. Whew, all right, well, I got about a million different things going on at once here. Some of them are working, some of them are not. But let's see what we got here on our cone. Well, I got our cone broke open. There's no matte phase. It looks like our slag dissolved all the matte. There's a little bit of metallic something down here I'm going to break off. But I'm pretty convinced now that we've got nothing in this slag here. The second thing we got to do is we got to figure out how to get our precious metals out of all this junk. Now, I've thought a lot about this problem last night, and I came up with a couple different solutions. The first one is I could use some acids, hydrochloric, sulfuric, or nitric, and try and dissolve that stuff. The other thing I could do is I could try and add a bunch of bismuth to it, alloy with the metallics that are in there, and try and get enough bismuth to where we could have a molten puddle in the cupel furnace and then oxidize away a bunch of the bismuth and a bunch of the base metals. I'm not even sure if it would work. So my third thing is I'm going to take that metallic stuff in the bin. I'm going to mix it with some borax and some oxidizer, some potassium nitrate. And we're going to try and oxidize away a lot of the more reactive metals, primarily that iron, because I think that's what's keeping the melting point really high. And that's what's preventing us from getting our liquid metal at the current temperatures we can get in our furnace. I don't know if you can see down in there, but there's some metal, some of that stuff still stuck in there. So I'm going to reuse the same crucible we used last night. I'm going to start by adding some potassium nitrate right to the bottom of the crucible. Get some oxygen down there, right where all that stuff is stuck to the bottom of this crucible. Hopefully we can oxidize that. The problem with the oxidizer is if you add too much, you get foam and froth and it boils over like crazy. I'm going to add, I don't know, this is kind of a seat of your pants thing. I'm going half on visual and half on weight. I think about 50 grams. I've got our stuff in there. That seems about right. I might add a little more. Why not? Hey, I've already lost it. Can I lose it anymore? There you go, maybe about 70 grams. That might be too much. I might be causing us problems there. I do actually have some in there already. Now I'm gonna add some borax. Okay, now we'll just kind of mix it all up there. Pour it into our crucible. Hopefully we don't have so much that it boils over. Now we'll put it back in our furnace. Well, we did our first pour. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but there was a nice metallic phase, liquid metal out of that crucible, so I'm hoping we've got some gold. Well, I think that worked well enough that I'm going to try it again. I'm just going to take all the slag we had, the metal, and I've added about 45 grams more potassium nitrate. We're going to put it right back in our furnace and see if I can refine that a little bit more. There. Now that's a better looking bead. We can work with that. 32 grams. And it's really heavy for the size. It's really, really dense. It's actually even a little bit gold colored right there. So I'm hoping it's mostly precious metals. Let's go put it in a cupel. All right, put it right in there. Okay, third time's a charm here. I think we got it on this one. There we go. I'll go add that to the other one in the cupel, and we'll have all of our gold, all our precious metals in that final bead. Man, this was torture getting this far, but I think we finally got it. All right, I think we have 32 plus another, dang, 20. Wow, there's a lot of metal in that little tiny guy. A little more bismuth. And we'll check back on that in a little bit. While we wait for that stuff to cupel, I've got a few larger rocks here. I want to take over the rock shop, cut them up, and I want to show you how cool this Mount Baker Lightning Quartz is. We've got one of our pieces chucked up in our saw here. This is the Mount Baker Lightning Quartz, and these sulfides running through here against the white quartz looks really, really cool when you cut it. All right, let's see what we got. Ooh. I've got that one wiped off, cleaned off. Beautiful, beautiful sulfides in there. Look at all that metal. Very cool looking. We'll take another slab off this guy, see what else we can get. So look at there, I got her wiped off. And right there's some nice gold. Right in the face. It's good stuff. Lots of really cool stuff out of that rock. I got little stand-ups. I got some slabs.
Yeah, look at that. That's a beauty.
And over here I got a small little rock with some slabs with some gold in it. There's some there. along in here. A couple nice pieces over here. So this one's got gold all through it. And here's one last look at them in the sunshine. Getting all cleaned up, we're getting them bagged up. But look at the sulfides in some of those. Man, these are really, really cool pieces. I'm really happy with them once they're out of the saw and cleaned up. And then I've got some pieces where I've taken a chunk of track and a spike from the old rail and cut some smaller pieces so you guys can get a little museum piece for your shelf there. All right, let's take a look here. So there's a nice mirror finish on it. There's no oxides forming, no little raindrops. Okay, let's have a look at our gold. And there it is. It's a beauty. See if we can get her out of there. Nice. Look at that crystal structure on there. That's pretty cool. There we go. Gold from the gold mine. 1 ton of gold ore has about 33.6. Just over an ounce. Just over 1 ounce per ton. So I was doing a little cleanup in the shop the other day, and I found these 2 bags of high-grade ore that I've completely forgot about. So in today's video, I wanted to sort through this stuff, see if we could find any gold in quartz, maybe do a little bit of slabbing, and then crush the rest of it down, sample some of it, smelt it down, see how much gold we have in it. And then you guys have been asking about getting some more of my high-grade stuff, so I'm gonna put some of this stuff on eBay so you guys can play with it, smelt it, and see if you can find some gold from my gold mine. Well, first let's figure out what we're working with here. But there is some good looking stuff here. So let's sort through these, see if I can find any gold in quartz. There's some. I find it's a lot easier to see the gold if the rocks are wet. And here's some really nice bands of that stuff where we're finding the gold in our high-grade stuff. So this is a really good sample. Oh, look at all that gold there on the bottom. Well, we got 3 piles here. I've got the stuff that looks, pretty good, but there's not enough. It doesn't look good enough to cut, right? So this we're all just gonna throw in the crusher, crush down to powder. This pile here has some really good looking stuff in it, but I can't see any visible gold. So what I'm gonna do is take some of these, I'm gonna slab them up, see if we can find any visible gold. You'll have pieces like this where you get all these shiny gray pieces. I'm gonna try and cut right through that shiny gray area, and that's where the gold hangs out. And then this pile in the gold pan has pieces that already have quite a bit of visible gold. Look here at this one. Gold all speckled through it there. Here's another one, you got gold laced all through there. Now for these smaller rocks and these smaller pieces, I use this little tile saw to cut. It's great, it's fast, it's loud, but it does a pretty good job for cutting these little tiny pieces, and I don't have to get them chucked up into the huge oil saw, and we can cut them real fast and see what's inside. It's always so exciting to see what's inside these rocks. Look at all that gold right in there. That's a nice piece. Ooh, look at that. That is some nice gold. Not so much over here, maybe a few little specks, but wowee, that's some nice stuff there. See that? Man, oh man. There's another one. Yellow speckled all through there. Great looking stuff. Here's one I cut right along the edge, and it is covered in gold across both faces. And something that's really unique is there's gold underneath the quartz right there. The saw didn't go through it. It's still buried in the quartz, but it's showing yellow through. This is a really nice piece as well. I've got some really, really nice pieces that I cut. I'm really happy with all these I stacked around here on the bricks. This stuff is stuff that doesn't have enough gold to make it worthwhile, so we're gonna add that to the crush pile. Now we're gonna take a look at some of these rocks with this little clip-on microscope. I got a link in the description below if you're interested. I'm just gonna start cruising across the surface here. And you can see where the gold is exposed in the cut face. But look at how it penetrates into the quartz there, and there's so much more down just underneath the surface. Man, that is cool. And it really, really sticks with that gray mineral. Very nice. Tons of gold in that sample. Here's another sample, again with the gold down in the quartz. Here's more of it. It looks like that silvery mineral has oxidized to those little brown pockets in this sample. The gold hangs right with it. And this is probably the best sample I saw all day. Look at the size of some of that gold. It's cool, you can see the saw marks in it. And there's those pieces that are hanging off proud to the surface. Let's see if I can get this spun around. Cool. That is really, really cool. Beautiful, beautiful yellow gold. The first step is to run it down this 4x6 jaw crusher. I'm going to crush everything down to about 1/4 inch or 3/8 minus. And once it's crushed, we're going to take it over to our Bico or Bico pulverizer. This thing's been around for a while, but it still works great. Crushes our 1/4 inch minus down to powder, and it helps liberate the gold from all the quartz and the other sulfides. Now we're going to put it in this tub here, and we're going to try and fold it over on itself, mix it up as best we can, and get it as uniform as possible. There is a specific way you're supposed to do this, and the assay books talk about it, but you essentially are trying to pull the stuff from the bottom up over the top and get everything mixed as best you can without allowing gravity to separate it into the minerals. Because if we put it in a bucket and we shook it, all the dense stuff will go to the bottom and you're not getting a real representative sample. Now I'm going to take a 500 gram sample. Now we're going to take our 500 grams and we're going to pan it down and see how much gold we can find in this stuff. Let's see what we got here. There's some there, but I guess for 500 grams, that's actually pretty good. Well, we don't have very much to start with here. A little bit of anhydrous borax. A little bit of silica sand, a little bit of soda ash, a little bit of potassium nitrate, a little bit of bismuth oxide. Mix it all up. I don't know if I've ever done a smelt this small. There we go. Let's put it in our furnace. Now what I want to do is try smelting down 500 grams of the raw ore to see how much either I missed in panning or is not liberated by crushing. We'll do 500 grams of anhydrous borax, 500 grams of soda ash. There's hardly any sulfides in this stuff, and so the oxygen released from our bismuth oxide should oxidize anything that's in there. We'll add, I don't know, 75 grams. Let's try that. See how close we can get here. 77 grams. And we'll pour it in our crucible. Well, there's some stuff at the bottom of that pour that I'm not real happy with. It looks like it might be larger pieces of silica, like the larger quartz pieces. And I'm wondering if that means we didn't add enough soda ash, because the soda ash will dissolve the quartz. And if we used up all the soda ash and there's quartz left over, I'm thinking it formed this kind of blob of junk down at the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm forcing our cone mold to cool down quick by putting water in it. I want to see if there's a bunch of that junk at the bottom of our cone mold, and if so, we'll get it re-smelted. Well, we got our metal, so that's pretty good. Our bead weighs 25 grams, and I put 75 in. So I still think there's a bunch in our slag, and there's some probably at the bottom of that crucible. But I'm going to go put this in the cupelling furnace and get it started. So you can see in the middle, there's all these glassy particles. I think that's a bunch of quartz that didn't get fully broken down. I'm going to crush this back up so we can get a much better contact with the flux. Well, I forced it again. I'm apparently impatient and don't want to wait for it to cool down. But look at the cool pattern it made. I think it's because I added all that extra soda ash of the second smelt, and so it's real basic. And then when I put a bunch of water on top, it dissolved out all the sodium oxide, turned it into sodium hydroxide, and then it dissolved in water. So I think that's what's going on there. But hopefully we've got some more bismuth down at the bottom of this thing. A little bit of something there. Well, we didn't get a whole lot more metal. Another 6 or 7 grams is all. But we'll go put it in the cupel with the first 25 and see what we got. But I really only recovered about half of the collector metal from that smelt. I guess the other half of the bismuth oxide got absorbed into the slag here, which is interesting because on the second one I actually put some nails in there as well to try and reduce more, but I guess it didn't work. Here's our little bead from my panning concentrates. It's not very big, but it's nice and yellow, and it weighs 0.032 grams. Even though that bead wasn't very big, 0.032 grams divided by 500 grams is 64 grams per ton, so about 2 ounces per ton. Not too bad. Here's our smelted stuff. Looks like it might be a little bigger bead, huh? There's our second bead. Still pretty gold in color. And it weighs 0.056. Wow, almost twice as much. Well, either I can't pan or smelting recovers a lot more gold. Now, probably the main thing that's going on here is that I'm not liberating the gold. I'm not crushing it fine enough from the stuff, so I can't actually pan it out. I'm sure I'm losing a little bit, but I bet you most of the gold that's coming out in the smelt is from melting and liberating it all in the melt rather than the crush. And there they are together. The panning one is on the right, and it is a little more golden color. I think we recovered more silver with the smelt. Lots of people ask me for crushed up hard rock ore they can play with and pan out. I think I can get 4 1 kilogram bags out of it. They're going on eBay. You guys know exactly how much gold's in this stuff. Anywhere between 0.08 and 0.1 grams. I'm going to start the auction at $1. So you guys tell me how much they're worth. Well, I'm going to wrap up this video here. We got some gold. We got some amazing samples. Be sure to check out those eBay listings. If you are interested in working for me and have some drilling experience, email me. I want to talk with you. I need some help developing my mine. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next video.